For my boys that like Honda and Honda only, skip to this timestamp on the screen to enjoy some Honda content. But for my homies that like Evos, check this thing out. I picked up another 4B11. I have tons of these now, but I needed a head for the build for that car. So it was $120 I paid for this guy. I'm very, very curious to see what happened. So let's go ahead and tear this thing down real quick. This is not the motor out of that car. That car does still have the stock motor in it. Still running somehow, but let's be honest, it's probably gonna look something similar to this when that thing goes. But we need the head, and I'm curious if there's anything else good on this motor. It'd be cool if like the crank was good. I hope the head, if at least the head is good, I got my money's worth. If the crank is good, we scored. Hey. Either way, there is a handful of good parts on it. All the Myvex solenoids, cam sensors, all that good stuff. Valve cover, a lot of good stuff on it either way. Beautiful. Where did the oil pump chain go? Very interesting. The amount of discoloring on the cams is kind of crazy. Hopefully the head is good. Any scoring? So far it's clean. Cams are a little discolored. Looks like they got kind of hot, but I think it's just rust, I don't know. But the journals are good, which is what I was worried about. Very clean journals. Well, here goes nothing. Ain't got no piston in it, so that ain't a good sign for the head. Do I even dare look at this thing? It's probably usable. Yeah, it's usable, I'm sure. Of course the valves are bent. But where the hell is our piston at? I can already see the block, or the crank's no good, so I'm not even gonna tear into the bottom end. I was hoping something would be fun down there, but yeah, it ain't even worth the time. I think the head should be usable. Of course, I'd prefer it to be like beautiful looking, going on my fully built sleeved motor for the 10, but I don't feel like spending the money when we got a good one right here, or a usable one right here. All right, boys, moving on to the beloved Honda. So where we left off is we got the firewall plate or cup rebuilt. That still needs to be welded in. But before I do that, I want to make sure our brake booster is going to fit fine. Keep in mind we are going to an older style brake booster. I think it's a EM1 booster, so we can run the EM1 master with the EM1 billet reservoir. Made in China. Now I'm not sure if it's going to mount directly in our firewall, but it's worth a shot. It does mount right in the firewall. Looks like we need a clearance. We need a tiny bit more space for the cup. And the whole goal with the swap is to have more space for the Sidewinder manifold and for the turbo. All right, we got the welding wire we needed. Let's go ahead and get this thing completely welded up. So I spent some time and ground down the side that we're gonna see the most. The majority of this thing's covered anyway, so I'm not too concerned with how it looks, but ground it down, smooth it out, gave it a quick sandblast. I'm gonna go ahead and paint the back side. Of course, the front side is gonna be painted while it's in the engine bay, and whenever we decide that we're ready to paint the bay, the front side will be painted at the same time. But let's go ahead and paint the back side real quick, some primer, some paint, and get her tacked on the car for the very last time. All right, we got some 3M seam sealer. I didn't put a ton of weld on it to the body. Kind of just did what the factory did. I did a tack weld, they do a spot weld. Same thing, but 3M controlled flow seam sealer. Never used this before. All right, let's try to make this nice and clean. I could tape it and might make it a little bit cleaner, but this should work fine. Oh yeah, this stuff's nice. Definitely not the most beautiful thing I've ever created in my lifetime, but that is the finished product. Seam sealer's on. I put just a touch of primer over it so it doesn't rust in the meantime. Let's go ahead and get this guy on and see how it actually looks, because this hides pretty much all of it. I feel like we can finally move on to figuring out the rear setup on this car. So basically where we're at right now is the whole front is good to go. Motor mounts are built for the K24. Subframe and steering rack is all situated to get the space for the T-case. Everything up front is ready. The only thing left is we have to reinforce the frame where we had to notch it for the tie rods. Other than that, she's done. So let's go ahead and start messing around with the rear of this car. We have the wagon rear diff with the wagon viscous and just some random CRV driveline. So let's see what we can do. I wish I ordered up some sort of mount kit, but we are starting from scratch. We have nothing at all besides a diff and a Type R that needs a diff. I'm thinking we're most likely gonna have to do a cutout right here. Is what I think. I could be wrong though. I do need to get the spindles and all the suspension back in the car to make sure everything lines up before I make any cuts. I mean, ideally it'd sit right there. That'd be so freaking easy to build mounts for. Pop off the back here, but I feel like that's extremely low. Yeah, let's go ahead and get the control arms and spindles back on the car, just a quick mock-up, and we can kind of use the CRV rear axles for a quick mock-up and see what we can do. So where we left off in the back is, I was trying to fit some of the CRV components like we used up front, but nothing fit. So we're kind of at square one. The subframe was completely different, and I think it'd be easier to modify the Type R subframe to accept the diff rather than modify the CRV subframe to accept the Type R. Well boys, I'm not liking what I'm seeing whatsoever. I got the driver's side on, and let me grab an axle and show you why I don't like this. This might be a little more than I bargained for. We may have to revisit trying to use the CRV subframe because it looks like there's no space for an axle. Not even an axle. The diff's a whole nother story, but if I can't get an axle to fit relatively easy, then I'm not so sure. Oh, sick. Fuck yeah. There goes my diff. Good thing it's beefy. So, if we take our axle, there's no space between the lower and the front of the subframe. If the rear sway bar was out, will that help at all? Hopefully that thing's fine. Yeah, see the dilemma? I'm gonna pull the rear sway bar out and see if that helps at all. If some of the bracing on the rear subframe was out, that would give us like another inch, and that probably would, I guess I need to figure out how high it's supposed to sit. This is confusing. I ain't never done this before. Well, boys, once again, just like on the front, I am completely lost on where to even start. I think the first step in this process would try to be to get the axles to actually fit, because if we don't have space for the axles, then it's game over. So I got the sway bar pulled out. As you can see, it's over there. And if we put the axle up, there's just enough space to fit it. Always sucks working underneath the car. It's hard to show you guys anything. Just enough space to come up through the lower control arm and the subframe. And that little bracket right there, if we shave that off, that'll give us most likely enough clearance to have an axle run through there. We could always modify the lower control arm a little bit if we need to. I'm trying not to do too much modification and reinforcing on this thing. Of course, we had to do a fair amount up front, but if we can get the axle to come through, then I think from there, I would just cut this here, there, put the diff up in there, and then start building some mounts. This would be very, very, very easy to reinforce, and I'm not too concerned with that. Just grab some nice beefy thick steel and go to town there. But yeah, I guess let's just, let's start cutting. Maybe cut there, cut that off, cut that tab off, and see where that leaves us. Well, these axles are quite a bit too long. I guess I can still get a rough idea of where we're gonna put the diff using these axles, which is nice. So I think the next step from here is gonna be to go ahead and put a big old slice in our subframe. Let's try to get a rough idea of how much to cut out. How wide is this thing? It's gonna make it a little bit confusing because this mount is not center with the input. But anyways, a little more than 8 inches wide, about 8 inches wide. Is this center? Is that rear mount center? It is not. This is gonna be confusing. How the hell? I guess let's cut a big hole in our subframe. I'll probably go a little bit wider than I think I need. So I'm just gonna take this whole center section out, and that should be a big help. It better be a big help. There ain't no going back. Well, that should be enough space for a diff, don't you think? These axles are so freaking long. Damn CRVs. Let's toss the diff up in there and kind of see what we got to do from here. I just got an idea so we don't drop our diff again. Hopefully it works. Use the drain plug as a mount. All right, I'm gonna drill a hole and I'll bolt this right to the diff so I don't keep dropping the damn thing. All right, we got her mounted up. It is at a kind of a weird angle, so this is only temporary, but it'll help for initial mock-up. All right, I guess I can just do this. There we go. Now we're thinking. It was tilted back, but now she's flat. Dang, I really wish we had some axles. Make life a little bit easier. But I'm thinking something like that. How does that look? I feel like it needs to be tilted back a little bit. Am I right? Maybe like that. I don't know. Is the diff supposed to be tilted? How does that look? Pretty damn centered. Actually, it's offset, remember? So how am I going to do this? I guess grab a tape measure. Of course, we need the input of the rear diff centered and lined right up. I mean, it doesn't gotta be 100%, but I think it's gotta be pretty damn close to, what am I trying to say? The output of the T case. So 21.5 and 20. We're way off. So it looks like up top we can just grab a plate. I might do a little brace underneath or a little hoop underneath or something. But it looks like there's plenty of material all around. I can just take a plate, weld it up top for the top mount, and then the very back mount and just come right off the back part of the subframe straight down, and we have a diff mount. That makes sense? How does this look for your diff location?
That looks tits.
And then my CVs will pop in like that. These fuckers are too long, so you like?
I like.
It looks like the driver's side axle is a tiny bit shorter than the passenger side, so technically speaking, should be able to get this axle in just to get a rough idea of axle angle and all that good stuff. That'll work. Is it fine if they're pointing down? I would assume so. So either way, this thing's probably gonna get custom axles. I think it's gonna have to, which I don't think that's a big deal. Already doing custom fronts. Not a whole lot of space there, but space is space. So I think it'll be fine. Plenty of space there. I think we should be good. It's fairly freaking straight too. The only thing is, it's pointing down, which I don't know if that is a bad thing. I don't know why that would matter. We could always put the diff up though. But from what I hear from Honda boys is that the drive shaft should be at an angle coming down from the T case to the rear diff. It should be at a very slight angle, so I need to confirm that. Overall, some very solid progress today. One last look up front, and I'll go ahead and wrap up the video. Here's how the Firewall looks. I know there's a lot of seam sealer on there, but I didn't want it to leak. That guy we're gonna have to pull out, or at least notch. Yeah, that one will be notched and reinforced, and then this guy will remove.
Yokes. When there is no operating angle on the U-joint, the output yoke of the driven member, the U-joint, and the drive shaft all travel together at a constant speed.
Well, boys, I am pretty pleased with the progress that we made today. I was hoping to get the diff actually mounted up on the subframe, but we'll get to that tomorrow, I'm sure. There's a couple other little things I need to take care of as well. We do have to notch the frame just a tiny bit more for like the tie rods. There's a bunch of random things we need to do. And I do want to get the motor and the trans and the T-case in the car and check out the drive shaft angle before we do anything crazy. So I'm gonna wrap it up right here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out, my good friends, and I'll see you boys in the next one.